All right, let's take a look at another sign here, and I'll start off by translating this thing at the top. It's something that's very commonly used at the top of signs. 안내하다 would be to notify, and just saying 안내 is the noun form of that, which would be some sort of notice or something like that. Now, 문, you might say, well, I know what that means. That means door. Well, actually, this particular Hanja version of 문 refers to some sort of writing. And it's actually the same 문 that you would see in maybe the word 문장 to mean sentence, or maybe even 문법 to mean grammar. So really what this is saying is or maybe some sort of word or something like that. And what this is saying is there's some sort of words of notice here. And in an English sign, what you would translate this to is maybe sort of saying, just saying notice at the top, or maybe saying something like attention. And really what you're doing is saying, hey, everybody who's looking at the sign, please pay attention because this information down here is very important. I want to focus a few minutes on these two first words here. It's very interesting. Kang in both cases, as you can see, the first syllable in both of these words is kang. Kang actually refers to descending or something like that, to descend, or the noun form of that, which is descending. Now, what I have here is the Korean syllable u and the Korean syllable sol. So u, the Hanja character for this, is one of the ones that I think most Korean people would be able to recognize. It looks something like this, just sort of because it looks, sort of a little bit different than most other Hanja characters. And this actually means rain. And you would see this u, probably the most common word where you would see u is in the word usan, to refer to an umbrella. Now, sol, the Korean syllable sol, the Hanja character looks something like this. The top part actually looks very similar to the rain one. Looks like that up here, and then at the bottom it looks something like this. And it means snow. Now, there's a lot of words where you might see this, but for me, the one that I remember the most commonly is the Korean dessert restaurant, which is called Seolbing. And it's a restaurant that sells sort of like these, one of the Korean desserts is called patbingsu, and it's a bowl, and it's sort of filled with like sort of shaved ice, but it kind of looks like snow, or you could sort of call it a snow dessert or something like that. Anyways, it's a Korean dessert, and it kind of looks like snow. So it's called Seolbing, or the restaurant is called Seolbing. Now, if you're thinking that, okay, this means descend and this means rain, well, that's descending rain, or in other words, rainfall, or in other words, just rain. You could say be, but this is on a sign. You're always using sort of difficult Hanja characters, and this is a very difficult way to refer to rain. And this thing as well is, well, it's descending snow, or in other words, snowfall, or in other words, just snow. And you could say the word nun, which means snow, and you could say the word be, which means snow. But on signs, you very commonly see Hanja characters being used. She refers to a time, and it's the same she that you would see to indicate the hour of something. However, if you put she after some sort of noun, and very commonly after some sort of Hanja noun, like this here or like this here, it's basically indicating when this or when this happens, or when this happens. So what we have already is when it rains or snows. And A, you're probably aware, this is added to indicate that we're talking or referring to a time. And I am referring to a time here, and specifically it's the time where it rains or snows. Now, nun, as you're probably aware, there's so many different things that nun can do, and so many different functions that it could have. And one function that it could have is to indicate that some sort of comparison is being made. And in this situation, what's happening is it's going to say, okay, well, specifically when it rains and or snows, you should follow these rules. But if it's not raining or not snowing, well, you don't need to follow these rules. That's the purpose of nun in this case. I talk about this a little bit in lesson 2, but I continue to talk about it really in all of my lessons, all the way sort of up to, I think, 110. But again, this is just sort of saying, in this case, you should follow these rules. But if it's a sunny day, well, you don't need to pay attention to these rules. What I have here, 안전, means safety, and 사고 means accident. Accident. Now, 예방, is usually it's a character that sort of means to prevent or preheat or pre-do something like that. And 방 means to protect. And really what this whole word means is 예방하다 would be to prevent, or the noun form would just be prevent. Now what I have here, this or we hada, and what's being added to it is this or all, or as you know, if you're adding this or this to hada, well, it's not actually this or this to hada. It's actually this that gets added to hada. In most cases, you're probably aware if hada gets added to one of these, and again, it's not this and it's not this, but if hada gets added to this, it most commonly, especially in conversation, would change to he. However, in formal situations, it's actually more correct. This he is actually sort of a contraction. And the real way of doing it is actually saying ha y'all. So ha y'all. They have the same meaning, but in formal situations, you're likely to see ha y'all, but in everyday situations or even in books, you would most commonly see he. But they actually have the same meaning. And well, what does this have? What function does this or we hada have, or we he or we ha y'all have? Well, it's put on, this would have to be added to a noun, and this is a noun here. This would be put onto a noun to indicate that we are going to do this thing after we he, all this stuff down here, after we are doing this so that, or I guess you could say in order for, or something like that, in order, or sometimes even it could translate to just to. We are going to do this stuff in order for, or so that this thing here is going to happen. This thing here is going to happen right here. So whatever, and we'll talk about this obviously in a second, but we're going to do this action so that we can prevent accidents is really what this is going to say. Now, what do we need to do in order to prevent accidents? Well, we already know that it's going to be something that when it's raining or snowing. This word here, hatchan, is really interesting. I looked this up in the Korean dictionary, and hatchan, it actually says that this refers to, if you use this word, you're referring to both streams and or rivers. However, I asked Korean people and they said, well, if I was ever going to use this word, I would never refer to a river. And if I see this word, I actually assume it's referring to a stream. So even though the official definition might say it actually is referring to both a stream and or a river, really you'd use it more commonly if you're talking about a stream. Now, 산책하다 means to go for a walk, and it's not just walking, but specifically if you're going for a walk just for the pleasure of walking. So that would be 산책하다. And so 산책 would sort of be just like going for a little walk, or the noun form of that. And 로 refers to some sort of road. So 산책로 refers to some sort of road that you could go for a little nice walk on. And specifically, what type of road are we talking about, or what type of little walking road are we talking about? Well, we're talking about one next to a stream. Very commonly in Korea, it's very common to see these little streams, and here's my little attempt at drawing a little stream. Usually these streams have sort of a little sidewalk beside them. And usually on one side it might be a bike path or something like that, and the other side might be a walking path or something like that. But you could call this 산책로 because it's a place where people would very commonly go for nice little walks. So that's the place that we're talking about here, these little walking paths beside the stream. 이용, well, 이용하다 means to use. 이용하다 means to use. So 이용 is the noun form of that, which is just usage. Usage, 이용. And this whole thing down here is basically saying don't do this noun, and that noun is usage. So in theory, you could say that it's translating to don't use this road that's next to the stream. I want to spend a minute to explain how this means. I mean, really all this stuff, and there's a lot of stuff going on here. All of this literally just means don't. And it's funny because you could have written this in another way. You could have used the verb form of 이용 to be 이용하다 and simply said 이용하지 마세요. You could have just said that. And again, this would be the verb form, and you're adding 지 말다 and then the imperative 세요 to it to say you do this command and specifically don't do this thing, which is usage. So it's don't use this stream path here. But this form down here is a very formal and quite difficult way of basically saying don't do something. And I want to explain how this means don't do something. I'm going to explain how it means don't do something by first talking about everything other than 금지 here. There's a lot of ways that you can say do something for me, not the negative don't do something for me, but there's a lot of ways that you can say do something for me. The most basic way that you can do that is you would want to add this or this followed by 주다. And for example, let's say you wanted to say, okay, go somewhere for me. Or you would write, okay, depending on where you want to go, ... and you would say 가 주다. And I haven't really added anything to this yet, but something will be added to this later. But this is basically saying that this verb to go is being done basically for somebody. The verb 주다 means sort of to give, and you can use it with verbs to sort of say that this verb is done for somebody. Now, what you want to add to that is you would very commonly sort of add an imperative ending to that. So you could say up here, you could say, if you wanted to say go somewhere for me, a very common way to say it would be 가 주세요. Or if you wanted to be a little bit less formal, you could say 가 줘. And that would be a little bit, they actually have the same meaning, but this one would be a little bit less formal, and the other one would be more formal. But a very sort of very, very formal and quite difficult way of doing it would be to say 주시, and the she is actually a formality in itself, and it's added to verbs to indicate that the acting person, the person who's actually doing the thing, doing the action, deserves a lot of respect. You wouldn't need this here, but in this form, it usually, because this form is a very formal ending, it's very commonly used here. And then you would add this followed by 바람니다. I talk about this in lesson 61, where I actually talk about 바라다 and how it can be used in many situations. This verb 바라다 actually sort of means to hope or to wish for. And really what you're saying, I mean, if you wanted to translate it directly, which it doesn't really work if you translate it directly, but you could translate it directly, is you're basically saying, I hope or I wish that you do this for me. Yeah, that's sort of a bad translation because nobody would ever translate it like that. I would actually translate this thing here. Again, we haven't really added the negative don't do. We're still telling somebody to do something. And I would just translate this really just to please. It's a lot of words literally to just say please. Like for example, if I was going to tell somebody to please go, you could literally just put 가다 and add it to this, and you could just say 가주시기 바랍니다. And that would be just a very, very, very formal way to say please go. Literally the same meaning would just be 가줘 or 가주세요. But if you really wanted to be formal, and signs are usually very formal, you could say this sort of extended thing. I talk about this again in lesson 61, and you can see you can climb the figurative ladder of, and that's what I call it here, the figurative ladder of politeness, where you can start off by, again, all of these sentences actually have the exact same meaning. The only difference between this sentence here and this sentence here and everything in between is just they get more formal as you get down. And you can see this last one that I have here this is the verb here, it would be 나가다, and I'm adding this whole ending to it, basically to just say please go now. Okay, so now we can understand that this part here means please, and this thing here, 금지하다 is very commonly used in signs to say don't do. There are other ways to say don't do, like for example, I told you that this is a way to say please don't use, and you could say 가지 마세요 to say don't go, or please don't go, or something like that. But 금지하다 is a verb on its own that actually refers to not doing something. So what we're doing is we're adding all of this whole please thing to a verb that means don't do. So if I have this 금지하다, this means don't do, and then I'm adding this whole please. So this is literally just saying, please don't do this. If I look at this whole sign now, again, this is just basically saying notice or attention. And then down here I have when, or in the time that it rains or snows, and specifically when it rains or snows, and not when it's some other weather thing, but when it's raining or snowing, in order to, or so that we can prevent accidents, please do not use the walking path next to the stream. Just down here, I just want to point out what this would mean. Ansan is actually the name of a city, and there's no way to translate that. It's just Ansan. She is not. It's actually not the same she that I saw up here. This she refers to hours or time, as I said before, but this is actually refers to city. So, for example, you could say 서울시 to refer to the city of Seoul, but Ansan is a separate city, and we're referring to, obviously, the city of Ansan. 건설 means construction, and 과 is added after sort of departments of particular things. Like, for example, if you were studying in a university and you wanted to indicate what department or what section of the school you were studying in, you would put 과 after that to indicate that you're studying at that particular section of a university. And in this situation, they're talking about the city, so it's the construction department or whatever you want to call it, the construction section or the department of Ansan City that's telling you this message. Well, that was fun. I hope you learned a lot.